Yeah. What's going on? We're gonna get into this NBA draft real quick. Um, after we do our thing, bust one of our records out real quick.
pick.
Miami is expected to select Jared McCain out of Duke. We know him as a 30-point scorer in the NCAA tournament. What do you make of this pick at 15 for the Miami Heat, Wasserman?
I give it an A. I love McCain. I love him. I love his game. I love his passion and personality. Listen, he's going to come in and he's going to give you shot making right away. He was a shot maker in high school, carried over to college. I have no questions about his shooting. Is one of the best in the draft. One of the reasons why I really pushed him up my board throughout the season is because I didn't think he would be this good inside the arc with his pick and roll, command and feel, and changing pace. He can shoot off the dribble. He's got a very good floater. I thought he would struggle badly around the basket. I remember in high school thinking, like, there's no way this guy's going to finish at the next level, and he made adjustments. I love guys who struggle at something and then make adjustments, and McCain did that. I love that fact that he's so adaptable. I mean, you could run him in ball screens, put him off the ball. There's no personal agenda with him. He's a team guy. I think people are going to really like him. Yeah, man, I just think he's a very well-rounded guard. I know he's not the biggest. I know he's not the most athletic, but he reminds me of an Emmanuel Quickly type, who you can don't give him a position, just put him in at guard. He'll be on the ball, be off the ball. He's going to make shots. He's going to compensate for the lack of explosion with his touch, with his craftiness. I think he's going to show that he's got some point guard vision in him. Off the live dribble, and so I'm a fan of this.
So Wasserman, apparently there was a mistake. Shams Charania is reporting that Miami is selecting Khalil Ware at 15 for the Miami Heat. So what do you make of that selection?
Okay, let me rewind here and get the last 30 seconds of my life back and your life back. Khalil Ware, I like Ware more than most people. He's had this narrative since high school that he doesn't play hard. I think it's more about he's not super physical, and that hurts him. But in terms of just pure talent, and he's got a case to be the most talented guy on the board at 7 foot, who plays high above the rim, and skill-wise, I mean, he shot 40% from three this year. He hits turnarounds around the post. The footwork is there. He's a very skilled 7-footer who can protect the basket and finish high above it. I guess I'm going to give this pick a B plus. I like McCain better. So I mean, I'm thinking McCain was going there. I'm kind of downgrading Khalil Ware here a little bit. At this point in the draft, I think the potential reward is worth the risk. But yeah, he did struggle against quality opponents, like when he played Edey and he played Klingon. I'm trying to think of some of the other NBA caliber bigs he played. He did struggle. So that's something to watch for. But from a pure talent perspective, he's definitely worthy of the 15 pick. And maybe if you get the coaching staff around him, you make basketball, he has to live in the weight room. He has to be there every single day. Yeah, I can get behind this pick.
You know, Wasserman makes a great point, Seth. And when you say, okay, what are things that a certain player needs to work on? He needs the right place. Well, the Miami Heat have shown us that they're the right place. They've also later, a few years earlier, now Khalil Ware. What do you think of Khalil Ware coming into the NBA, the 15th pick in the draft here?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Was said. I mean, he's a frustrating player. Off it, or was a very highly rated recruit coming out of high school, came to Indiana, really showed you great flashes. I mean, he had some games where he was absolutely dominant and, in fact, looked like a lottery pick, and he's essentially what he is. But there were certainly times where he disappeared. He's just not in good enough shape. He's not strong enough. His conditioning isn't good enough. I even heard in some of his workouts, he would just get super winded. And so you have this narrative of a guy not playing hard. I know these NBA teams are digging like really deep. I've never heard a bad thing about Khalil Ware's character. I just think he's just not physically developed. And again, he's a sophomore in college. So we have to remember how young these kids are. If the light does go on with him and he understands, look, man, all you got to do is just ramp up something that is very much in your control, which is your work ethic and your ability to get strong and your ability to get in good physical condition. And you are going to make a lot of money because this kid is super talented. Sometimes kids don't work hard because there is some type of character, red flag, judgment question, maturity, whatever. I have never heard that. It may be true in some instances, some circles, but that certainly wasn't the buzz out of Indiana. The Indiana coaches liked him. They enjoyed coaching him. They said good things about his personality. He'll get strong, got to get older, but the physical talent is there. Like but I think guys who shoot the basketball can pretty much fit in anywhere. I think where you mentioned about giving them another big body. They had Kevin Love coming off the bench, Bam Adebayo. Guys shuffling in and out of the lineup happens on every NBA team. I think a team like Miami and Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, I would trust them to do the due diligence they needed to do to be like, look, if this kid is going to come in and just work hard and do everything that we say, then he can be a good contributor for us both this season and down the road.
All right, we took a look a few picks ago. Now we are halfway through the first round. Prize for so far of the first 15 picks. Seth, why don't you go first here?
Oh, it's got to be Zach Edey. I mean, I just saw somebody, one of the other draft covers on Twitter calling it the worst draft pick in NBA history. I think the Portland Trailblazers might have something about to say about that, passing on a certain guard from North Carolina. But it's just he's just getting picked way too high for a guy who just doesn't bring a lot of value, and then just stylistically about as bad a fit as you can imagine.
Yeah, biggest surprise for me is Tijan Salon going six. Tijan Salon going six before Donovan Clingham is hard for me to wrap my mind around. I just, particularly with Charlotte, that needed toughness and needed a sure thing. Tijan Salon is like such a wild card here, and man, that one shocked me. And I mean, if nobody has been listening to Seth Davis for the last hour, Dalton Connect is still on the board. That is him not getting picked is at this point equally as surprising as Edey at 9 and Tijan Salon at 6 over Clingan.
So that's a great point that you make about Dalton Connect. And I think there's an elephant in this room that now that we're at 16, 17, 18, we need to address. And Wasserman, you and I talked about this on the mock draft show yesterday a bit. So Seth, I kind of want to hear from you about Isaiah Collier. Here was a guy that came in as McDonald's All-American Game MVP, all so heralded going into USC, was on a lot of mock drafts as like the number 1 pick. And here we are, 16 picks in. We haven't mentioned him yet. What happened with him his freshman year at USC where he's dropped so far?
Well, the main thing that happened is that he got hurt and missed 6 games midway through the year. And then he played on a team that had some other injuries. Of course, Bronny James had the heart issue. And there were other injury issues going on with USC. It was not a particularly good team. Kind of felt a little bit dysfunctional. Was already kind of rebuilding type of season. And then he just wasn't good enough. I mean, he just couldn't shoot the ball all that well. So, you know, you look at his percentages, it was 34%. But if you watch him shoot, it didn't feel like that. You know, that said, he is a physical specimen, and there are very real reasons why he was the number one rated high school senior in the country and projected to go that high in the draft. So this might be, you know, folks overthinking it. Again, you know, we've seen some non-shooters going early. We talked about Buzelis. We talked about Ron Holland, obviously, you know, good athletes who don't shoot the ball well, but can do other things. I think Isaiah Collins is definitely one of those. I would expect him to hear his name called at some point tonight. So being a first round NBA draft pick is you know, nothing to be disappointed in, but certainly if you look at where he was projected to go a year ago, you know, if I told you at the start of the college basketball season that we'd get through the first half of the first round of the NBA draft and Isaiah Collier would not be picked, I think a lot of people would have taken that action.
Yeah. By the way, it's funny how the narrative shifted in the beginning of the season. I thought he was overrated when he was in the top 3. Now I think he's undervalued. I think people are putting a little too much stock into the negatives and not enough stock into what he really can do well. I think he's also the type of guy, Collier, who's going to need the right fit. And maybe he's better off, you know, as a 6-man spark type of guy instead of somebody who will run offense for 30 minutes, because when you're a bad decision maker and you're a bad shooter, it's hard to trust you for 35 minutes a game with the ball. But if you can just say, hey, Isaiah, come off the bench, put pressure on the rim, play fast, you know, bring your physicality in, you can add a different element to our rotation.
And the Philadelphia 76ers get a player that they most certainly could use. Jared McCain out of Duke at pick number 16, Wasserman.
Yeah, this is an A. Can we just go back and get whatever I said 10 minutes ago? I'll do it again. And I guess I got this pick right on the mock draft. I really like the fit here with Philly and with Tyrese Maxey. Again, 2 interchangeable guys. But, yeah, I mean, he is a shooter, shot maker. He could every type of jumper in the book. And I put a lot of stock into these undersized guards into their floaters. I think it's such an important shot. He's got some of the best touch and I think we're going to see a lot more, you know, pick and roll stuff than maybe he was given credit for playing at Duke, where they had Proctor and they had Roach, and so you know, of course, the offense is going to run through Joel and Maxey, but I think there's more offensive upside than he gets credit for, which I think is the lack of size and athleticism. And the lower assist total at Duke overshadows some of his creation ability. So he's crafty. And again, I love his personality. I know the TikTok stuff might not be for everyone, but I'm a fan of him I think he kind of has this positive energy that's good for the locker room. You know, and then when he gets on the floor, he's super tough. It's not like he's playful on the floor. He's a killer on the floor. So I'm a big fan of him as a person. I really like his game.
You know, Seth, you look at the 76ers situation, right? They have, you know, an MVP in Joel Embiid, but they have a ton of cap space in which you think they're going to get a max player to go alongside Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid and another max player. It seems like he's going into a great situation where they're going to need his skill set and he's going to get opportunities to produce.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was Duke's best player. He was Duke's toughest player. He was Duke's most consistent player. When Duke was playing in their toughest games, in their most critical situations, he was the player who came through the most. He reminds me a little bit of Devin Booker when he was coming out of Kentucky. He's one of those players that, you know, when he pulls up in rhythm, in control, and getting some space, you just expect the ball to go in. And to Was's point, you know, the TikTok thing and his whole vibe, he's really into sort of mindfulness and meditation and being mentally prepared and taking all the steps. You know, every level that he's ever played at, there were doubts about whether he was physically able to compete. He's not small, but he's not big. Certainly for a 2 guard, he's not a 1. He's definitely a 2. But he's a pure 2. He's got a pure stroke, super crafty, plays with a great spirit about him. And he's just going to keep getting better and better because he's going to, you know, take care of himself. not only getting stronger, but getting his rest and doing all the things that he needs to be able to do to recover, to get ready. And he's going, I think he's the type of player, I've said this about a couple of guys tonight, who will be able to play with other good players. So you look at a Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, obviously Joel Embiid has to get the ball, and Joel Embiid can step away from the basket. Jared McCain is a really, really good catch and shoot three-point shooter. Shot over 41% overall from the arc as a freshman in the ACC, as a starter on a top 10 team. So I think he's NBA ready with a lot of upside. Can really, really, really shoot the basketball. Those guys tend to stick around for a while.
I know we're going to see a Joel Embiid, Jared McCain TikTok video coming in like just a couple of weeks from now. But Wasserman, I mean, I look at him and I go, a lot of these players, we don't know what they are. And with him, I think we know exactly who he is and exactly how he fits on the Philadelphia 76ers. I see your A, and I almost feel like jumping the shark and saying this is an A+, the shot in the arm that franchise needs, because they're trying to put a lot of new pieces together.
Yeah, I mean, I almost forgot that you can do an A+.
I mean, at 16,
yeah,
that's a value pick, yeah.
I guess whoever takes Dalton Connect next gets the first A+ of the draft. Will it be the Lakers, by the way, who are obviously trying to win right now? I've heard the Lakers really like Misi from Baylor, so that we'll see what happens here. But yeah, back to McCain. He's just so adaptable and interchangeable, and yeah, he's going to fit in right away. And certainly, Philly has like nobody under contract next year, so I think that the flexibility that he gives you as somebody who could play on and off the ball and be kind of positionless is pretty important when you're trying to build a roster.
Yeah, they have guards that have kind of fluxed between the G League and the NBA, like Ricky Council IV. So, let's go to that for a second, Seth Davis, because I know you know who Ricky Council IV is. And I thought he was spectacular in the G League. And Daryl Morey sat like next to me at the G League showcase and was like, yeah, we got to get this guy playing some more. I know he's not in this draft. When you look at Jared McCain, Ricky Council IV, like the 76ers have a lot of young talent that Traquavion Smith is another guy, right? That people may not be familiar with, but these players in the fact that they can play in the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's not just a matter of assembling talent. Again, and the Celtics were obviously the best example of this, which is why they just won the championship, is it has to fit. And there's a difference between being a good player and knowing how to play with other good players. And so that's why I think it's very important as a guard, if you're not going to be a playmaker on the perimeter, if you're going to be a scorer, you've got to score in different ways. He's not going to be a powerful McCain. He's not going to be a powerful finisher at the rim, but I think he's going to be an efficient finisher at the rim. And I think he can bring back the sort of, the throwback mid-range game that seems to be illegal in some quarters. But when you're playing in space and you're playing off of other good players, and then you bring that toughness. I mean, don't let the smooth taste fool you. With this kid with the TikTok videos and the smiling and whatever, and the fingernail polish. I mean, he's got it all going. Put him in between those lines in that 94-foot rectangle, and he's going to fight you. And I think that the fans in Philly are going to really love that attitude. He's a much better defender than people give him credit for, and he's a pro. I mean, he's going to approach every aspect of the job, every aspect of his life as a professional. You're never going to have to worry about what he's doing in his spare time, where he is, what decisions he's making. He's going to be about all the right things.
All right, the pick is in, and the Lakers select Dalton Connect.
Thank you.
Off the board.
Thank you.
Seth Davis is a happy camper.
Thank you.
Wasserman at 17. Jackpot for LeBron James and Anthony Davis. What do you give this?
Let's do our first A+ of the draft, and maybe the first A+ I've given doing these grades. What a perfect guy to fall to LA, right? I mean, this is their window is now. They don't have time for a project, and so yeah, you get how many times are going to say this cliche? Plug and play. I mean, he's going to come in right away and knock down shots. He gets to play to his strengths. We don't have to worry about creating or pick and roll ball hunting. He's going to be an immediate shot maker, but also he's tough, man. He is. He doesn't get enough credit for how tough he is. and a better athlete, I think, than he gets credit for as well. When you see him in play above the rim, but he's just so polished and refined. His footwork coming off screens, he's so fundamentally sound. And something tells me that JJ Redick is going to love Dalton. I mean, I couldn't think of a better guy to fall to them, and somebody I'd imagine they weren't even talking about at number 17. So everything aligned here, I think, for both parties with JJ joining the Lakers and then getting a skilled shooter who understands the game, and you can come in at 23 years old and play right away. I mean, I don't think it could have worked out better for both parties here.
Or Seth Davis. The floor is yours.
Yeah, what do they tell Dalton Connect to sending him down to the G League so they can bring Bronny up? That'll be an interesting conversation. You know, I think JJ, you make a great point about JJ Redick. I mean, I think JJ Redick looks at Dalton Connect and says, that's the player that I wish that I could have been. Because JJ, of course, one of the great college shooters in history, didn't have that size, certainly didn't have that bounce. And so for him to fall to the Lakers, of course, the Lakers made all these moves last year, bringing in Taurean Prince, bringing in Gabe Vincent, re-signing Austin Reeves, of course, with the hopes of improving their three-point shooting. Didn't really happen. Obviously, LeBron is a ball-dominant guy, not super efficient when it comes to three-point range, but Dalton Connect is a guy I think they'll probably look to, bringing him off the bench. It'll be fascinating watching him play opposite Austin Reeves. Very, very similar player. In fact, if I'm JJ Redick and the Lakers, I'm going to tell Connect to move in with Austin Reeves. First of all, I live in LA, Dalton. I'm sure you're watching right now as you're going to the podium. You want to crash on my couch. I got 2 kids just left for college, so we got plenty of space. We'll feed you. He's going to love living in LA. And, look, it's when you're talking about a guy who did not get a Division I scholarship offer coming out of high school as an academic non-qualifier, could have given up on the whole basketball thing altogether at that point. And then, ended up saying, no, I want to keep going. And he went to junior college, worked out well for him there, got his grades in order, went to Northern Colorado, Big Sky's leading scorer, had a sensational season at Tennessee. So the fact that he's being picked with the 18th pick in the NBA draft, I mean, that's an incredible story. And yet, because of the narrative of the night and what all of our expectations were, he now comes in with something to prove. He comes in now with a chip on his shoulder, wanting to prove to everybody who passed him over. And I think he's going to make a lot of people feel really silly because he's going to come out firing.
All right, the pick is in. The Orlando Magic at 18 select Tristan Da Silva. Wasserman?
Bonnie James.
A-. I love Da Silva. He's just another one of these highly skilled, super intelligent guys who you expect to just jump into a rotation and make things happen for you without being, without needing a lot of touches. He's going to be a low maintenance, stretch the floor, pick his spots. He could play in the post. Obviously he's shot in around 38%, I think, the last couple of years. I mean, it's a simple combination of shot making, of just high skill level and IQ. And I think that combination is another, let's go back to the word, plug and play for Orlando. So he's somebody who shot up boards. I hear such amazing things about him off the floor, how cultured he is. And it seems like hard to imagine him not being successful pro, and pretty good fit, in my opinion, coming off the bench for Orlando.
Seth, I look at the Orlando Magic. This is the lowest position they've drafted in 18s, 2012. I mean, they've gotten guys like Paolo Banchero, Cole Anthony, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black, Jed Howard, just to name a few. And it feels like Tristan Da Silva at 18 fits in with those guys.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I can't say I'm a huge Da Silva guy. Obviously, I see all the things in him that Was sees: the size, the skill, the shooting ability, the range, the ability. I keep saying it, to play with other good players, play with a really good point guard in KJ Simpson, international player, native of Germany. The thing you did hear from scouts about him is just that he's a little soft, right? He doesn't play with physicality. If you really got up in him, you could take him out of his game, and that's going to be an adjustment for him. But to your point, Orlando's a very good fit. He's not going to come in there and have to do a whole lot. He can come off the bench. He can find his spots. He can play inside a little bit and So if Banchero wants to come out, or Mo Wagner, he's got that outside skill as well. Kind of a plug and play guy. Let him find his way. Wouldn't be surprised to see him spend some time in the G League. He's just got to get stronger. He's got to get used to the physical level of play in the NBA, because certainly the scouting report on him was, if you can get physical with him, he will shy away from contact, play away from the basket. And if that was the case in the Pac-12, it's certainly going to be the case in the NBA. But very solid pick here.
Okay, so I want to address some of the comments we have coming in from the chat. Again, this is an interactive show right here on Bleacher Report. I thought this one was kind of funny. It actually was a few minutes ago. They said the Lakers should have selected Zach Edey. Right. I just thought that was hilarious, because we all thought like Zach Edey would be available in this place. And of course, he went way higher than anybody thought. But this one, it seems a little bit serious. Jack Irwin says Magic are going to waste De Silva. And Wasserman, I disagree with that. I feel like they give their prospects opportunities to get on the floor and play.
Yeah, they do. I'm not even sure waste De Silva. I mean, that would suggest that because Paolo and Franz are there, he's just not going to get enough playing time. I guess that's where that argument is coming. But man, depth is so important in today's league, and he's going to get his chance at some point. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked, like I said, if he goes down to the G League for a little bit. But we don't need like instant production right away. Just there's going to be injuries. He's going to get opportunities to play, and everybody will need shooting at some point of his season. And I think that's one thing he's proven to us over the last few years, that, if you just look at the numbers and the eye test, this guy can make spot up jump shots and space the floor. So yeah, there might be, the first half of the season, we might not hear his name much, but I promise you at some point he's going to get on the floor and give them a surefire translatable skill that Orlando could certainly value.
If Mo Wagner can get minutes, I think Tristan De Silva is going to get minutes. I kind of like this one. It's something we haven't touched base with yet. Carlos, I'm guessing that I can't tell if he's trolling or if he's one of these people that have, when you get into your lift, I don't know if this happens to you guys, when you get picked up anywhere, somebody starts talking to you about basketball. Is Bronny getting drafted or not? I'm confused. Seth, would you like to enlighten the people about what's going to happen here in the first round in regards to Bronny James?
Bronny James is going to be selected in the second round tomorrow night by the Los Angeles Lakers. It's the worst kept secret in this draft. On the one hand, it is a little bit of a waste of a second round pick. I mean, you can get pretty good players in the second round, including a two-time MVP now playing for the Nuggets, who was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. But it's been interesting, sort of playing with the possibility of another team wanting to take Bronny James, A, just to screw with the Lakers, B, maybe you do something that says, hey, LeBron, you want to come here and play. But the problem is, if you do that, then you're making an enemy of Rich Paul. And I personally would not want to make an enemy of Rich Paul. So I don't think there's a lot of suspense. Unless Was is hearing anything differently, Bronny's getting picked tomorrow night by the Lakers.
Let's take a look at the
business.
Yeah, let's take a look at the big board now as the Raptors are on the clock. They just re-upped Scotty Barnes in a 5-year deal that could be worth upwards of $225 million. They traded away Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby to kind of make this Scotty Barnes' group. So looking at this board, Wasserman, who do you like as a good fit for the Raptors here at 19?
I mean, again, at 19, I'm still going with. I'm still taking best available player. I'm not worrying too much about fit for Toronto, and I like Collier with Quickly. Right, that would be the backcourt there. You got to put Collier next to a shooter and a guy who I think is a good defender. I've being a New Yorker, I've watched Quickly for a long time. Last couple of years, and his 6'9" wingspan, he can defend. I don't know if he's got that reputation around the league, but I promise you he can defend. So the Quickly's shot making and defense, I think, is a good fit for Collier's lack of shooting and rim pressure and physicality. Who else we got? Going down the board, I like Jalen Tyson. I just think he's a pro scorer.
The pick is in, and the Toronto Raptors went in a different direction. Jacoby Walter at 19. Of course, Jacoby named after Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. That's his first name put together. Wasserman at 19. Do you like this for the Toronto Raptors?
Yeah, I'll give this a standard B. I mean, I don't see a lot of upside with him, with Jacoby Walter, but I do think that he has a valued archetype as a 3 and D2 guard. I personally like my guards who could handle and create and offer some level of playmaking, because if you're a guard who does not play make, you really have a very limited margin for error as a shooter and scorer. And I just don't see him as a guy who's going to create a lot for himself. But he is a very polished shot maker and not just spotting up, but running off screens. And he's pretty physical getting downhill. I think if there's space, he can attack you and get to the rim. He took a bunch of free throws this past season. He's got solid defensive tools. Being maybe a little bit harsh, I probably this deep into the draft, I don't think people expected Jacoby Walter to be there, particularly earlier in the season when I think he opened the year with a big offensive game. But I'm buying the creativity. I am buying his shot making, and hopefully the defensive tools translate to effective defense. He reminds me of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That's kind of the comp I've been giving him throughout the year.
That's the perfect comp. In fact, before that pick was announced, when we had that list of best remaining players, Jacoby Walter was the guy that I was going to highlight. I think he's got great upside. I really do. He kind of had a typical freshman year that he showed you some really great potential, and then he might disappear. It might be for a few segments in a game. It might be for a few games. But there were stretches in watching Baylor this year, guys, where Jacoby Walter might put together 10 or 12 minutes where he looked like a surefire lottery pick. And so I'm looking at some of these players like a Cody Williams. Like, to me, Jacoby Walter showed a lot more, and I mean a lot more potential than Cody Williams showed. So, some freshman inconsistency. And of course, he played in a great system for guards at Baylor. So I think that hides some errors. 34% from 3-point range is pretty respectable for a guy who had some cold stretches. So again, I think it's a good team for him to be on. Not expected to contribute a whole lot in year one, being picked this late in the draft. Put him in the D League, let him get stronger, let him get hungrier, let him learn how to play. It would be great if he could add some playmaking skills. He hasn't really shown that, but he's a bucket now. And I think he's going to get a lot better given how young he is.
Yeah, certainly for the Toronto Raptors. They're just at a point now where they have changed their franchise direction. They're looking for guys who can play around Scotty Barnes, and Scotty Barnes is, this new age point forward. We talked about like point guards and trying to find traditional guys in the draft. And Seth, I go back to you on this. When you look at Scotty Barnes as a guy that's going to potentially bring the ball up the floor, going to defend a bunch of different positions, how does Walter fit in with Scotty Barnes and what Scotty brings to the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have the potential to complement each other, but I think that Scotty Barnes can do more things, right? Scotty Barnes also a 34% 3-point shooter, so he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he's certainly a respectable one. But he really gets to the glass, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 blocks a game. Jacoby Walter isn't that. He's certainly not that on the defensive end. I think he has it in him. He's kind of a wiry guy. He's not super strong, so he's not just going to, be like a Devin Carter where he can take guys out. He's not physically built like a Stephon Castle, but a lot of times when I go to an NBA game to cover an NBA game, I see guys that I covered in college and hadn't seen in a while, and I'm just amazed at how much their bodies change over the years. So I'm a big Jacoby Walter guy. I'm telling you. And again, like a Rob Dillingham, I think Jacoby Walter is going to be a better pro than Rob Dillingham, for what it's worth.
So, Watson, what do you think of that assessment? I mean, because Rob Dillingham went 8th and Jacoby Walter went 19th. Do you agree with Seth's assessment comparing those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's such different types of guards. Like, where I agree with Seth, like, Rob can hurt your team. Walter can miss shots, and he's not going to hurt your team. And, he's got more room to improve off the dribble, but it's also he mentioned that Baylor had a bunch of guards, so he was really playing a role here. So I'm still trying to figure out, I guess, where he can go, where Jacoby Walter can go with his game, because it was pretty simple. It was a simplified role that he had at Baylor. But yeah, when you compare him to Rob, Rob brings you a lot more creativity, but also a lot more downside because he dances with a lot. He's negative defensively, and he takes some tough shots. Where Jacoby, he's kind of just like a rock solid player, and I think the shot making is going to be there. Forget that 34%. Who cares? What he had, I think, over 73s this year. And if you followed him in at Lincoln, in high school, like he can make plenty of shots. And so, yeah, I think he's just a very safe pick, I guess.
I think the second third of this first round, I love Devin Carter at 13, Jared McCain at 16, Dalton Connect at 17. I think when we look back at this draft in years to come, it's like when Tyrese Halliburton was falling, and I was like, Killian Hayes, why are they taking Killian Hayes ahead of Tyrese Halliburton? What am I missing? I think there's going to be a bunch of guys when we go back and we look at McCain and Connect at 16 and 17, like, how did they end up almost at 20 in this draft? Let's take a look at the players available that we might be able to scream them out in years to come. Well, let's not. The pick is in, number 20 for Cleveland. Jalen Tyson is taken by the Cleveland Cavaliers. What do you make of that, Wasserman?
A-. I mean, I love Jalen Tyson. He's somebody who I had on my radar coming in as like a potential breakout guy, and yeah, he certainly was that for Cal, and I kind of keep using this term. He just looks like a pro scorer with how polished he is in terms of his footwork, creating shots for himself, hitting different types of jump shots, followaways, pull-ups, threes. He could play above the rim, and I think he's got to improve a little bit off the ball, and it'll be interesting to see what his role is. I like him more as a second unit guy where he could just be a scorer as opposed to a guy who spots up a lot. He had a really high usage at Cal, so if he gets that role where he gets to just create and make plays for himself as a second unit guy, I really like that at number 20 overall.
Yeah, I would agree. At 20, I think he's a solid pick. He was a guy a little bit under the radar throughout the college season. It's not like we were all locked in on Cal because they were not an NCAA tournament caliber team. By the way, was his third college in 3 years. Started off at Texas, then went to Texas Tech. He was one of those guys who was looking to get a waiver early in the season, and then midway through the season, because of some of the legal hits that the NCAA was taking in court, where they wiped out that whole process. But he was able to get eligible and play 31 games for Cal. Shot 36% from three, and really it's his size and his positional size that brings the intrigue. So he's one of those guys that you watched during the college season and you thought, well, let's see what happens when we get to that pre-draft process. Played very well at the combine. He was certainly noticeable in those scrimmages to my eyes as someone who physically looked like he could do some things, and then in the private workouts, obviously tested well and has performed well. So going to late first round of the Cavaliers, again, you'd expect him to spend some time in the G League, but he is a guy that, in terms of his maturity and his physicality, he is more ready to play right now in the NBA than a lot of guys who have heard their names called tonight.
All right, we're 20 picks in, about over 2 hours in. So let's go back and look at this draft as it has developed, going back to the first overall pick, Zach Richarche. This is a guy that, Wasserman, you had as on your mock draft. You got the first 4 picks right: Richarche, Alex Sarr, Reed Shepard, and Stephon Castle. How did you have it play out the way that it did, and knew that those would be the first 4 picks in this draft?
How did I do it? I closed my eyes and guessed. I mean, you talk to as many people as you can. I think that the first couple, there was just like a consensus on how it was going to play out. And then, of course, one wrong pick and it's got the domino effect down the board. So, I hope that I don't get judged by the mock draft that I do on the day of, particularly because I'm doing shows and I can't adjust anyway. But my value, I think, in this space is that I'm giving you guys throughout the year who you can expect to see, and I think my mock drafts in the middle of the season are more important.
Well, how about this? The New Orleans Pelicans select Yves Missy, number 21 in the draft, the 7-footer from Baylor. Looks like they needed a center, and they got one at 21, Wasserman.
Yeah, hey, I got this one right. Give me some credit here. Listen, this is an A-. I like Missy. I think that he's got a fairly simple game. He's a rim runner, he's a finisher, he's a shot blocker. But I heard in workouts that he's showing a lot more in terms of his ball handling. And I think Baylor ran a lot of plays for him at the top of the key where he got to face up a slower-footed big man and attack him off the dribble. And we saw he could do a little bit of that, like putting the ball down and finishing on the move. But it's probably not going to be something he does often in the NBA. With Yves there to just to play defense. And honestly, I think his perimeter defense is more valuable than his rim protection. He doesn't actually block a ton of shots. I think he shines the most is pick and roll, switching out, sliding his feet, not letting guys turn the corner on him. And then he's got great hands around the basket. He'll give you those easy buckets. He'll run the floor. One of those guys whose games translates. It doesn't have super exciting upside because of the lack of skill versatility, but I do think he's got a little bit more face-up game than he was given credit for.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm a big Yves Missy guy. Just a really dynamic athlete. When someone is that tall, that long, has a lot of bounce. I know he came to the game late, so he's young for his age as a basketball player. And he's very disruptive defensively. He's not a tremendous shot blocker, but he's a shot alterer, and he's a great help side defender. He's got terrific switchability. He can guard NBA players out to the three-point line. Again, not for the full 24, but for segments of the game, if he needs to switch out, if he needs to recover. The big question will be, how much is that skill set going to come along? For somebody who didn't grow up necessarily playing the game the way that a lot of American kids do, American big kids do, you have to wonder if there might be a ceiling there, but it's also very tantalizing to wonder, how much he has to get there. That's what's so fun about the NBA draft. Fun for us because our jobs don't depend on it, but for these NBA teams to really try to be able to project year 2, year 4, year 6, what is Yves Missy going to look like as an offensive player? If he doesn't get any better, he probably won't be in the league. But if he does get better, he could be a starter or certainly a rotational guy on a championship level NBA team because physically, athletically, he just has so many qualities that you absolutely cannot teach.
Well, those are great points you make. And I think for everything that you're saying, this is the perfect situation for him because the New Orleans Pelicans know where their offense is coming from, right? And we saw Zion Williamson play a career high in games, get up and down the floor, create shots for others. And at times you kind of go, okay, Jonas Valanciunas, when Zion's not there, he's perfect. And at times he's kind of a little messy on the floor. But Zion does not give you that same impact on defense. So with Zion on the floor, you kind of look at it like, oh, they're drafting a kid that maybe won't give you as much offensively, but can cover for Zion defensively. And maybe some of those units will be better off. So, Wasserman, I think for that reason, for the New Orleans Pelicans, I really like this for this kid, just to be able to be on a team that it seems like it's just a great fit. It doesn't seem like he would fit on every single team, but for the Pelicans, it seems like a really good fit.
Yeah, I know actually New Orleans was hoping he'd be on the board, and they didn't think he would be. I'm getting texts right now. So this was a nice surprise for them. And I think Valanciunas is in the final year of his deal here. So they're going to need some rim protection, some beef up front. And it's one of those spots where Missy could just kind of play to his strengths there. So I like the fit and I like to pick this late.
Looking ahead to the Phoenix Suns, because they are a team that came in with such lofty expectations. Now you got Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, rumors that this team might be trying to move Kevin Durant. What kind of player, what position do you think is the most need for the Phoenix Suns, Wasserman, here?
I don't know if it's about a position. I think you just need to find a contributor. You know, their depth isn't really there. I mean, they rely so heavily on their big three. And listen, I'm not gonna lie, I don't watch a ton of Phoenix Suns basketball. I got to watch the French League. I got to watch you know, G League. So I don't get NBA is not a priority for me. However, I do see their roster, and it looks like they need depth. And when they pay those three guys that much money, you know, you have to find just value contracts, production on these rookie deals. So anybody they think that can come in and play a role fast is something that I'd imagine they value. I have them taking Ryan Dunn. That's just, no, I have no intel on that. That's who I have. I think Dunn is a guy who can just another play to strengths guy. Just get out there and wreak havoc defensively and fly in the open floor and play off other skilled players. So, that was kind of my logic in projecting Ryan Dunn to Phoenix. But yeah, I don't think you can be.
I have to stop you there and say that I hope you're wrong, because I'm looking at our draft. I'm like, we're 2 picks away from the Knicks potentially getting him, right? And I'm like, please, I hope I got my fingers crossed that you're incorrect, because every Knicks mock draft, we have the Wahoo Wah, the Tony Bennett product coming to the New York Knicks. So, Wasserman, I respect you. I like you to be right, because I know how much this is your Super Bowl here. But in this particular case, I just hope you're wrong, because I think that he would be great for the New York Knicks. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, he would be. He was a Long Island guy, like myself. And I think the question with New York now after that Mikal Bridges trade is like, how many? And you got Bridges, you got OG, you got Hart. It's like, I guess you can never have enough defensive wings, but
there you go.
They prioritize something else.
There you go, right, Seth? You can never have too many defensive wings. That's the truth about the NBA, especially if you're going to try to defend the Boston Celtics, the now reigning champs.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to me that you, as a Knicks fan, are that high on Ryan Dunn. I mean, I hadn't necessarily been picking up on that. I mean, I'll give you a sleeper for that Knicks pick in terms of somebody who could space the floor a little bit and show some moxie. Would be Baylor Shireman from Creighton as a guy who can really, really space the floor. Maybe a tad high at 24, but not too much so. I mean, at some point, don't you want to score the ball, make the game a little easier? You just want to grind your way to an NBA title here, Chris. What are we looking to do?
You said NBA title. That's all that matters.
Right.
Trade alert. Phoenix is trading the 22nd pick to Denver, which takes Deron Holmes. So that is actually going to the Denver Nuggets. All right, Deron Holmes. Wasserman, what say you?
Well, in my mock draft, I have the Denver Nuggets selecting Deron Holmes just at number 28.
Yeah.
So listen. I like.
And you're right. You're right. We're counting that as a win. Wow.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on. I need all the W's I can get here. Listen. I like Holmes, and one of the reasons I like Holmes, other than the athleticism and stuff, is that he goes to the combine. Scouts give him specific things he needs to work on and add, and he did it. I mean, he became a threatening shooter this year. He became a guy who can attack closeouts, can put the ball down. And so if those are real, if those actually translate, then we have something really interesting. This is what did I give it? Did I not give it a grade? Did I say let's give it a B? I probably would have taken him a little bit later. He's a little bit lower on my, but the athleticism around the rim you can't teach. He's always top 3 in the country in dunks. He's a walking easy basket. And if the shooting improvement translates, I think it was 38% on, not too high a volume. They didn't need him to stand away from the basket too much. He's too effective around it. But if you can add that 3 ball to complement the athleticism around the hoop, then you have something really interesting, and obviously more interesting if he can attack closeouts and put the ball down. He improved his passing this year as well. Like, I just love the fact that scouts told him he needed to improve certain skills, and he did exactly that. So being able to improve is a skill in itself. So we'll see how he adjusts once he gets to the next level. I'm kind of, is he a rim protector? Is he a power forward? I'm not really sure it matters if he's coming off the bench for a playoff team like Denver. So interesting pick. He's one of the guys I'm really excited to see where his development goes, just based on what I said. We've seen him kind of evolve a little bit each year, and But of course, he's super interesting because of just how athletic he is inside.
Yeah, and getting to play with Nikola Jokic, that's going to be a gift. We've seen what it has done for Aaron Gordon over the past couple of years, how it makes the game easy for him. Here's some more details on the trade between the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns. So the Nuggets send the 28th pick and a 56th pick and 2 future second-round picks to the Suns to move up just, 6 spots. So, Seth, I mean, clearly the Nuggets had a home circled like this is a guy that we could use that fits into what we're trying to do as a team 1 year removed from winning.
Yeah, I mean, I was nodding my head along with a lot of what Was is saying because I'm a big Deron Holmes guy, and the improvability, if that's a word, is the essential piece here. I mean, he made 1 3-pointer his freshman year at Dayton. He improved. He was a 32% 3-point shooter, only 6 of 19 as a sophomore. Put his name in the draft, got the feedback, and he was a 39% 3-point shooter as a junior, while still being very effective around the rim. It's not like he said, "Okay, that's all I'm going to do." So he's shown the ability to improve, and now he's a spacer and physically can step into an NBA game right now and hold his own. And he's walking into a situation. I think the guys, even though I know the money isn't the same, but the guys who are being picked at this point in the draft, I think are in the best situations. I think it is very, very difficult for any rookie to walk into the NBA and try to be an effective player from day one, especially if they're young. Now, Deron Holmes is a little bit older than a lot of these other younger players going at the top of the draft, going to bad teams who are going to need them to produce more. He can come off the bench, spell Jokic, spell MPJ, spell Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, maybe spend some time in the G League if the minutes aren't there for him, become part of a championship level organization and bring that level of maturity and toughness. And by the way, one point that I think is important to make is because we think about, because now we're talking about the Nuggets who are going to, obviously an NBA title contender. And we try to picture, well, can Deron Holmes help them win games in the Western Conference Final, win games in the NBA Final? He may not be on the court in those games, but you know what? There are a lot of games between October and May that are getting played where you're not necessarily at full health, and winning 3 to 5 more games can be the difference between being the number 1 seed and the number 3 seed. So he's a guy who I think is going to bring a lot of value to this organization right away as a rookie, but also moving forward because they're going to know how to develop it.
To your point, the guys that they've drafted over the last 4 years, whether it's Julian Strother or Peyton Watson or Christian Brown, like they played less minutes in the playoffs, but during the regular season, those guys won them some games. And of course, that affects the seeding, especially in the Western Conference. You need those guys. For Holmes, Wasserman, who's his best current NBA player comp? Who is he most like?
I think I compared him, and this isn't perfect, but I compared him to Trace Jackson Davis. Similar because they kind of just added a little bit more each year. They improved their passing, they improved their touch a little bit more. Realistically, they're on the floor for what they do inside. Holmes just keeps hard to put a comparison on a guy who keeps changing. So I don't. It's hard to really give him one, but I think early on he's going to be more of a Jackson Davis type who works around the post, plays a lot of pick and rolls. But if the 3-ball becomes part of his arsenal on a regular basis, then obviously that comparison has to change.
Well, Seth, this is a bigger topic of discussion when I look at the NBA draft, and guys who spend 2 or 3 years and show improvement. I'm surprised they don't go higher, right? Like when you're explaining Deron Holmes, and I'm like, wait, he's 21 years old, right? 6'9", 236, the right size. And you're telling me he added something to his game every year. So theoretically, if I'm an organization, I'm thinking he'll continue to add to his game. And I think that's why a championship organization like the Denver Nuggets can spot him and move up and go get him. And I think we should see more of that going forward in the NBA draft.
I think so too. I mean, every argument, there's data and facts to underlie it. And I know these guys live in the numbers. So I would be curious to see if this whole way of thinking where you like someone who's not as good of a player, but he's 19 over somebody who's a better player, but he's 23, because you think that the 23-year-old has topped out. And we all know that in the grand scheme of things, at 23, you're really a baby. Your life is just starting. And so the idea that you can't improve and improve significantly at the age of 23, I just don't buy it. So because someone is 23, to me, doesn't feel like their finished product, especially as we talk about Deron Holmes, as Wass has pointed out, someone who's already shown the ability to improve. Why would you think that just because he's got a 2 at the beginning of his age number that he's going to stop improving? There are guys who've been in the NBA 7-8 years who are still making significant strides. That's just the way that it goes. So, I see some of these other guys like a Tristan da Silva. Like, I'm not sure why Tristan da Silva is thought to be a better pro prospect than Deron Holmes. I think Deron Holmes was a significantly better college player. So I don't know if that's oversimplifying it, but that's certainly what my eyes have seen.
All right, here is a look at Seth's sleepers still on the board. Who do you like to be the next guy off the board, Seth?
Well, I don't know if any of these guys are going in the first round. I mean, I think Shireman is a little bit of an X factor just because of the shooting piece there. Tristan Newton, I'd maybe like to hear Wass's opinion on him. For a guy who was the best point guard in college basketball, won 2 back-to-back championships as a starting point guard, most people are projecting he either doesn't get drafted at all or is getting drafted late in the second round. You think he's going to hear his name called tomorrow night?
Sorry, who are we talking about?
Tristan Newton.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy he's got a chance. I thought it was interesting that at the NBA Combine he chose to skip scrimmaging. I don't know if that was because the team told him to do that, or if that was, confidence in where he's going, or, I don't know. But he's the type of guy where I think in the 45 to 60 range, you just, you throw out some of the typical traditional laws of scouting and just say, this guy does a lot. He helps me. He helped, Connecticut win games in so many different ways. And it's an eye of the beholder thing. All it takes is one team to buy a winner like him. But yeah, he doesn't on paper fit the bill of a classic NBA guard.
Yeah, great points that you guys make. And, you kind of look at everyone and you hope that there's a spot for every player and that they at least get the opportunity. So especially when you see a kid is a 2-time national champion running the show, it just feels like there should be an opportunity for him. The Milwaukee Bucks are on the clock, and we know what's happened with them the past couple of years. When they win the championship, Giannis wins 2 MVPs, a finals MVP, defensive player of the year, but has been injured in the playoffs the last years. A team that traded away Drew Holiday. Now Drew Holiday has won another championship. So the Milwaukee Bucks, as the years have gone on, Chris Middleton also suffering through injuries and not the same player. Damian Lillard clearly getting older. They need a little bit of youth and trying to figure out someone who could step on the floor and play for them. I feel like this is a very important pick. They've been trying to get some of these draft picks right the past couple of years. And really, Wasserman, it hasn't worked out for them. So of the guys on the board, is there anyone that you see is like, okay, he's ready to come in and contribute? Because that feels like what the Bucks need here.
Yeah, I mean, again, Ryan Dunn, I know we just talked about him. Kyle Filipowski is still on the board, correct? I mean, he's somebody I think could play a little bit of a role early. I like Shireman. As Seth said, I have Shireman going to the Knicks at 24. We'll see if that actually happens. But yeah, I think at this point you take an older guy.
Well, the pick is in. Milwaukee selecting A.J. Johnson from the NBL at 23 in the NBA draft. Wasserman, can you enlighten us on A.J. Johnson?
I just got a flashback to when Milwaukee took Thon Maker at 10.
Wow.
Listen, A.J. Johnson is, I wonder that if he didn't have a couple of nice flashes at the NBA Combine, if he even gets drafted at all. He barely played overseas. This falls under the category of most surprising pick of the draft, mainly because I barely played. I think he averaged maybe 3 points a game or something like that overseas. He chooses to, skip college. He was highly touted recruit. I see the appeal to it. By the way, this grade gets a C. I think this is a C. I'm not a big fan of his, and let's talk about the positives. He is a big, athletic, Jamal Crawford-like guard. I don't think he's really a point guard, although it's what he's going to try and sell. may have sold Milwaukee on. He is a scorer. I'm not really sure if he's a good shooter yet. I don't think he's a great decision maker yet. I think it's right now, the best way to put it is we like the idea of A.J. Johnson. Whether or not that idea actually is to life, we're guessing here because he pretty much took off this season. He showed up at the combine. He played pretty well. He had a couple nice flashes of self-creation into a step back. And maybe the highlight of the combine and a driving dunk that showed off his athleticism. But he is 106. What do we have? 167 pounds, and at 6'4", he is super thin. I don't think he's polished enough in any aspect of the game. And I think when you're a guard, you can't be raw. I mean, guards are the ones that have to have the most skill on the floor. I think he's just so far away. It's just funny because we're talking about Milwaukee needing a guy to come in and make things happen.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't picture A.J. Johnson stepping on an NBA floor, at least, at all over the next season. And then again, with a guy like this, there's just so much guesswork in terms of how he's going to develop. Sure, the potential is there. I haven't seen enough to make me confident that he's going to reach it.
Tell us what you really think.
You said a C. That sounds like an F-, by the way.
Yeah.
You said a C. You seem like you're a great grader, like a grade on a curve.
Well, look, it depends on what you expect, and it depends on what your philosophy is as a franchise. I mean, everyone, for obvious reasons, loving Drew Holiday and what he was able to do for the Celtics, but you can't grade a trade when your best two guys are hurt. And when you got Giannis and Damian Lillard hurt in the playoffs, what is Doc Rivers supposed to do? What are the Bucks supposed to do? Oh, here we go. Coming to my Wizards.
Knicks are trading the 24th pick to the Washington Wizards. So for those that aren't paying close attention here, the Wizards traded into the 14th pick after taking Alex Sarr, right? With the second pick. They traded with the Portland Trailblazers for the 14th pick. Now they're trading with the New York Knicks for the 24th pick in the draft. Seth, that would be 3 first-round picks in their first year of truly rebuilding. What do you make of it?
Well, I guess we don't know yet what they're giving up for this pick. But, for me, as a snake-bitten Bullets and Wizards fan, all my life, I go back to the days of Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld and Kevin Greavy. What this tells me is that if they're getting 3 first-round draft picks, they're going to be better next year. They will not be good enough to make the playoffs, but they won't be bad enough to draft Cooper Flagg. So this is exactly where the Wizards are. They tanked for this draft, and they got Alex Sarr out of it. So we'll see who they pick at that position. Again, I'd like to see who they gave up. But just to get back real quick to the Bucks and A.J. Johnson. So I would not be surprised. Like if you told me right now A.J. Johnson is not going to play a single game for the Milwaukee Bucks next season, he's going to spend the entire year in the G League, that wouldn't surprise me. But if you also told me that A.J. Johnson 5 or 6 years from now is going to be an all-star, that wouldn't shock me either. And so that's the pick that you're making. It's funny that you said about what he did at the combine. His ability, he's only 6'4", and he's got a super narrow frame, almost like, Tayshaun Prince back in the day, that I don't think he's going to be able to build a lot of strength on it. But the way that he attacks the basket, the way that he can get above the rim is something that just excites NBA teams. So if you're the Bucks, late first round, you already have a championship caliber team. If you can keep everybody healthy, you're not going to get a ton of value at this point of the draft, although I do think a guy like Shireman would have been perfect for them. He's an older 50-year senior guy. But A.J. Johnson, clearly a future play. We'll see how it pans out.
All right, so in the chat, some guy named D. Zaddy says, Knicks all day, baby. You got to wait, my friend. You got to wait. All right, the pick is in, and it's going to the Washington Wizards. Oh, no, here's the actual trade details. Knicks traded the 24th pick to the Wizards for 26 and 51. Washington selects Keyshawn George. So Keyshawn George of the Wasserman, we talked about this. What was it? 7 points per game at the University of Miami.
Yeah, I mean, he's another idea. I mean, you love the idea of a 6'8" guy who can handle and shoot, but right, not highly productive. I mean, the flashes were very enticing, guys. Those big wings that can make plays off the dribble, and he was a 40% 3-point shooter. I think that's what you have to buy is the positional size and the shooting. I'm giving this grade a B minus. I get why teams would see upside. I don't, because I'm not buying the creation flashes. I just don't think he's quick enough off the bounce, and he has no explosion around the rim. So I think you're getting a big shooter who can handle it, but I don't think the handle is going to be functional enough because of his lack of speed that he's going to be able to do much with the ball handling. But yeah, I mean, he's a fun young guy, and 40% 3-point shooting for a 6'8" guard. Even though I can't even call him a winger forward because he's just not physical enough to guard that position. But yeah, this late in the draft, I get it. I don't think I expected him to be there. He was a green room invite pretty early, and so yeah, let's Washington really better hope that he builds some strength here, a little bit more explosive as he adds muscle.
Well, Seth, you said a few minutes ago that the Wizards won't be in the Cooper Flag business. I can almost guarantee you that they will be in the Cooper Flag Ace Bailey sweepstakes. Looking at this draft so far, it seems like a lot of projects of these prospects, right? Like Alex Sarr, but Bub Carrington and Keyshawn George. I don't think these guys are going to have impacts in the NBA.
So, Keyshawn George is a 6'8" wing from Switzerland who didn't show any defensive prowess whatsoever, averaged about 8 points a game in 23 minutes for a team that did not make the NCAA tournament. Sounds like a Washington Wizard to me. I think he'll fit in perfectly with their G League franchise. I mean, who knows how he pans out? Again, Washington was not the only team that is enamored with his skill set, his combination. I think Wasp puts it perfectly, and like you said with AJ Johnson about liking the idea of a player. You see a 6'8" guy who can handle and shoot a little bit on the wing. He's got that European style combination, and you think you can project him forward, but it's not something that strikes me as somebody like we've said who's going to come in next year and have a huge impact. So we'll see. He can shoot the ball, he can play in space, that's for sure, and those guys usually find a way to make money in this league.
Well, clearly the Wizards thought that potentially the Knicks might take him with one of these picks, right? Because the Wizards were sitting there at 26. The Knicks were at 24, and the Wizards moved up 2 spots to go get him. So it's almost like if you think the Knicks aren't going to take him, he'd be sitting there 2 spots later, and they gave up also the 51st pick in the draft to go get him. So really interesting to see a team just move up 2 slots for a player that could have potentially been there, Wasserman. They must have had some intel that maybe the Knicks were going to take him off the board.
Also, there's some speculation, or before the draft, and maybe after the Bridges trade yesterday, that the Knicks were going to trade one of those 2 picks, and maybe Washington was nervous about a team moving up and taking one of those Knicks picks to take Keyshawn George. But yeah, I mean, they obviously targeted him and didn't want to take any chances. So you move up 2 spots, and the Knicks are going to say, sure. I mean, they did that same deal with Emmanuel Quickly and Deuce McBride, where Leon Rose likes to just move back 2 spots. He listens. I would love to be a fly on the wall and hear who initiated those conversations, who made the call first, because it is a theme with the Knicks and Leon just moving back a couple spots. But yeah, I mean, we'll see with George. There's so much. Again, I've used this term a couple times. There's a lot of guesswork and uncertainty with him. But I would have, if it was me, I would have let somebody else make that pick.
Well, the fans are chiming in on the chat here on Bleacher Report on this live NBA draft coverage. Ringel, I think that's his name, says Keyshawn needed to go later, right? That you could potentially get him later in the first round or maybe even the second round. And Penn Simmons says, big guard with handle but lacks speed. Sounds like Luka. No, he doesn't. He does not sound like Luka. There's nothing about this pick that sounds like Luka. Nothing at all. Can we all just agree on that? That we do not think
maybe just not even have that conversation at all and waste our breath.
Yeah. All right. But I love it when I can't tell if people are trolling on the chat or if they're serious. But I love when it's like that place where I'm like, oh, I would love to go in on this person because, Seth, you know how it is.
Oh,
You've been in a
welcome
gym.
to my world, man.
And somebody will tell
world.
you something just so insane that you're like, no, No, like
I know. But, I get caught into this, working with many of the same guys you do down in Atlanta. Because when we compare players, when I make a comparison, I'm not necessarily saying he's as good as. I'm saying he kind of plays like, because we want our viewers and our listeners.
Yeah.
So I remember many years ago when Mitch McGary was at Michigan. And I said on the air something effective that, he kind of reminds me of Blake Griffin. And Steve Smith went prolific. Blake Griffin? Did you just compare him to Blake? I said, I didn't say he's as good as Blake Griffin. He's a big power guy with bounce who steps away from the rim, who's more athletic than you think. And leave me alone, Smitty, right? So, but I think the folks who watch us and try to troll us like to get our blood up, and it's not hard to do sometimes.
I just love how you had Smitty down to a T, because he's always so smooth.
He is.
Field.
He is. You got to round. You got to round.
A hot take.
Yeah, no, I know where his buttons are, man. I spent a lot of time with Smitty, as I know you have too.
But this is the most important part of the draft, okay? Because we have talked about how the Knicks are going to be in the second apron going forward. OG Anunoby, what is it, that 5-year and like $215 million extension that he signed, and then trading for Mikal Bridges. They're not going to have many draft picks going forward. They got 2 picks here. And if you look at the history of what the Knicks have done with these late first-round picks, Quentin Grimes, Miles McBride, Emmanuel Quickley, Mitchell Robinson, Seth, they've really nailed it the past 5 or 6 years in this range with guys who've come in and contributed, even if they've taken a few years to develop.
Well, I think it's fair to say that in this instance, they won't be taking anyone from Villanova. Villanova did not. Has not.
They got 4 Wildcats. I think it's enough.
And I promise that my good friend and now television colleague Jay Wright is not coming through that door. He has coached his last game, but to me, the Knicks, partly because they have so many good Villanova players and just added a great one and Mikal Bridges, just a great example of culture. Like, you have to honor your culture. You have to have a culture. You have to have an identity. And then you have to kind of stick with it. Sometimes the best players are the ones that you don't get. The best decisions are the ones that you don't make. And so I think the Knicks have drafted well. They have traded well. They have signed well to try to stay consistent with that culture, getting a little bit lucky sometimes. When they traded for Jalen Brunson, I don't think a lot of people were projecting that he would be an MVP caliber player. But I do know that they made that pick on culture. So they put themselves in position to get lucky. And sometimes that's even more important than getting lucky. So I'll be curious to see who they pick here. I think they should take Shireman. Get a shooter, get a spacer, somebody who can, who can play out far away from the rim. That dude's got in the gym range. I could see him opposite DiVincenzo, and then they have all those sort of athletic defensive wings falling in. That's what I think they should do.
There's something developing here that we can't ignore. Wasserman, Isaiah Collier, right on your big board. I see him 9. We talked about him a little earlier. We're down to pick 25, and he's still not off the board. Is there something else going on with him outside of? We'll have to discuss that a little bit later. The pick is in, and the New York Knicks are selecting to pick home Didier at 25. Wasserman, we discussed him yesterday. What do you think of this pick by the New York Knicks?
This is a B+ pick. The Knicks are deep, and whoever they draft is probably going to be just insurance play in case some guys get hurt again.
It's just bad
because they are a veteran team with a pretty deep bench. So Didier, I don't know if he's coming over right away. I don't know if there's been discussions about that, but I really like his game. He's really grown on me throughout the season. He's a NBA-sized wing who shoots the ball well. He shoots it off the dribble. He's a guy who produced in Germany, playing without the ball a lot, cutting, running the floor. And I always say about him, he's got a very adaptable game. We didn't get to see him play on the ball a ton in terms of, creating for himself. He's not the craziest athlete in the world. I'm not sure he's like a lockdown defender type, but he's got a very versatile skill set, and he's somebody who you could just plug. He's going to fit everywhere because of his off-ball skill set. But super young, he plays a very mature game, and we'll see if he comes over right away. Of course, with the Knicks, you always got to see if they even keep this pick. But to take him at 25 suggests that they had been clearly scouting him for a while. And I know their international scout, and he's lives overseas. I'm sure he's very familiar with that EA, and a lot of these teams have grown on him throughout the season. So he's somebody I think has just every month moved up the board a little bit higher. And it'll be. I mean, there's still a little bit of uncertainty with him in terms of does he come over or not, but clearly a long-term play here, and not somebody they expect to be part of this upcoming rotation.
Yeah, that's a little bit of, again, what we're talking about with the Bucks and AJ Johnson. Like that's that's really the first decision that you're making. Like, what are we looking to do? Do we need someone who can come in